Hello, welcome back to my channel, Retire Abroad Finance. My name is Martha, and this channel is about helping people to reach their goal of retiring truly, whether that's retiring abroad or retiring here in the US, we're going to talk about it. So, our goal is to retire abroad, and today's video is how I'm going to show you the various costs of how I arrived at our total budget for traveling abroad, number one, and number two, how we knew that staying in Florida was probably not going to be a good option for us if we wanted to retire early. Um, so I am currently 58 years old. I'm going to retire before I turn 59, but that is the plan. I'll have another video about what's going on right now. Um, but in any case, so what I've done here is I've listed our budget items for both Florida and overseas, and I want to do a comparison between the two and explain the differences and why I have estimated what I've estimated. So let's just go ahead and get started. So as you can see on the left-hand side, I do have the categories that I've done for our budget. Yours may be very different, and that's fine. You have to budget according to what is going on in your life. And then in column B, I have what the amount would be in Florida. And in column C, I have the amount overseas as an average. Okay. So let me explain the average. So we will be in Australia for 3 months each year, approximately, staying with my daughter and grandkids. We do pay them a small rent monthly to be able to, make it easier for her and also, reserve ourselves a room in her house kind of thing. We're just trying to help out. So it's not exorbitant, but it does factor into this figure. But so for 3 months a year, we're in Australia with a reduced rent. And then for 3 months a year, as of right now, we're also in the United States helping out with my mom, and there's no rent involved there. We have a uh, camper. It's a what are they called when they're on a hitch? They pull behind. I can't think of the name of it, but we have a camper on the property that is very comfortable. We managed to pick it up for $3,000, and believe me, it was worth a lot more than that. Um, so we've been using that. This is the fourth year, I believe, that we've been using that camper, and it's been worth its weight in gold. So we have no rent here in New Hampshire. So all that factors into the averaging, of course. The amounts that I'm going to take is going to be based on the year worth of planning that I've done, what I've seen, and also what I have actually booked in countries. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing is we're going to go right down the Florida budget and talk about how much it would cost us if we wanted to retire early in Florida, and then once we see that, could we have actually done that? So first we've got rent. So in Florida, we actually had a mortgage, and we had a fantastic rate. We had a 2.65%. Um, when we bought the house initially, obviously it was higher than that. I still thought I was getting a good rate at, what was it, 5.5 or 6.5? Because I've lived through the 70s and the 80s, bought my first house in mid 90s, and our first mortgage rate was 9%. Before I get it in the comments, yes, I know that comparatively speaking, houses were less expensive and easier to acquire, but the interest rate does factor in there somewhere. You have to admit it, okay? Even though I know it is harder today to start out and get your first home, you do have to admit that the interest rates do factor in. So when the rates went down to the 2.65, needless to say, I refinanced immediately. So what you're looking at here is just the principal and interest on the mortgage and the HELOC. That's it. So, so anyway, if we had stayed, that is what we would have continued to be paying. I did not escrow for taxes and insurance, so you're going to see those later on in the budget. So 1759, and that's purely just principal and interest. And that's really inexpensive in Florida. So I already know that. That's a good deal. All right. Next, we had electric. Electric averaged out to 185 a month. Um, Fairly decent considering that, 6 months, well, it's Florida, 8 months, 8 or 9 months out of the year, you're using air conditioning. So that's pretty good. Water bill, that includes trash. That was $40 a month. Internet, we had Charter. We tried to go to T-Mobile home internet and we were out on an island in Florida. So it's a barrier island. Beautiful location, but once you start doing that, now you don't have all the options that you would have if you were closer to a city. So we had one option, that was it. The other ones didn't work. $85 a month, it was. Our property tax. So Florida has some protections for its citizens with property tax, including the homestead exemption. So our property tax did go up a little bit most years, but by the time that we sold, it was pretty much running at 300,000, excuse me, $3,600 per year. Um, Now that was based on our prior value. We sold it for almost twice as much as what we bought it for 8 years ago. So the new owners are definitely going to see a property tax increase, definitely. Property and flood insurance. Okay, so this is a hot topic in Florida. You are paying out the wazoo for property and flood insurance. So let me explain. Because of the hurricanes, and there were hurricanes, we saw our property insurance rise year after year after year by incredible amounts. Um, and that really was part of what got me thinking that, you know what, we are not going to be able to retire in Florida. This is getting out of control. Um, we saw that we went from, having the house completely covered for property insurance to uh, really not being able to rebuild fully after, if a storm took out our house. For example, the last policy, and I have huge deductibles. Okay, I use insurance purely like insurance, both my health insurance, my property insurance, car insurance. It's really used for insurance. So I take a larger portion of the risk. I have a higher deductible to keep those premiums down. And still, the property insurance would only have covered us for $330,000 of of replacement. If you think about what happens when your house is destroyed, you have to pay to get the site uh, demoed. So it has to be completely clean before they can start again. All that costs something. So not only would we have not been able to fully rebuild the house, we would have had to include our demo costs in there too to be covered by that 330,000. There is no way you're going to rebuild a $500,000 house with 330,000 um, in insurance money if you first have to get everything cleaned up, and it's just it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. And every single company I talked to, they would not do full replacement value anymore. So there was that. And then on top of that, where we lived was close to the water. It was about 40 steps from the beach. Um, and so we had to have flood insurance because here's a fun fact for people. Um, if you have hurricane damage from to your house and you have water damage within that, you may or may not be covered with your property insurance. It doesn't matter. So you will be covered for water from above. So if, roof damage, that kind of stuff, because of um, the wind and the rain and all that, that will be covered. However, if the hurricane causes a huge storm surge, like what happened on the west coast of Florida that wiped out entire communities, that's water from below. And your regular property insurance does not cover that, even though it was caused by the storm. So you have to have separate flood insurance to be fully covered. On the last year that we owned that house, our flood insurance alone was $1,800. And that went up every year. So we had to pay for property and flood. So that was a cool 500 just about a month. And it, like I said, it went up every year. And that was what made me understand that staying in Florida just was probably not in the cards for us because sooner or later it's going to either A, be priced beyond what you can afford, especially if you're on a limited income because you've retired, so you can't just go out and make more money. Or number two, if the companies just pack up and leave, which is also what was going on in Florida. And by the way, it's going on in California. They're just not covering people. They're packing up and leaving. They're exiting the market because they can't make money here because there are too many um, storms. So, California, too many fires. Next category is home maintenance, storm repairs. I just went on about storms. Each year we had at least one hurricane. Most of them took out the fence in the back that had to be fixed each time. And then we had just minor little things here and there. Okay, our cell phone, I switched from Verizon to T-Mobile earlier this year, saving over $100 a month. So there's that. Cell phone was $70, and that's a Essentials 55 plus plan for us. Okay, now this medical, dental, and vision plan, this is what I found on the marketplace when I looked for a plan with a subsidy. Okay, so there's a subsidy included here. With a subsidy that would enable us to get treatment either in Florida or New Hampshire. Okay, I think the marketplace plans are great if you're going to be in one place. Okay, and if you can afford to cash flow because the deductibles are very high, which matches my philosophy about insurance. But the the rub is when you try to, snowbird somewhere, if you have to go back and help with family, like what we're talking about doing here, what we've done, then it starts to get really expensive. So for us to get medical and then, if we got dental and vision on our own, it was going to be $600 a month easily. And that's for the lowest plan. So, it only goes up from there. Now, if we're going to remain in the United States, we definitely need to have a car. That's not optional, especially not, where we live. We don't live in, New York City, Boston, San Francisco, LA, where you can hop on public transportation. It's not like that. So, um, our car insurance for the two cars was running 165 a month. We've now gone down to one car and it only dropped it to 120 a month. And that's considering that our car is a 2007, excuse me. Our car is a 2007. I have no tickets. I'm a very safe driver, no accidents, and still 120 a month for a car that's maybe worth, I don't know, 3,000. I don't know. So, that's kind of crazy, and that's gone up as well every year. Maintenance. I am very, very blessed in that I have a husband who is able to and enjoys DIYing car maintenance, and he does a fantastic job at it. So, that is for, the supplies for oil changes, for, any repairs that he has to do, replacing the brakes, whatnot, as well as, putting a little aside for, inevitably that job that's going to come up for the car that he is not able to do with the equipment at home. Um, but he did. he has saved us so much already. So anyway, if you're of a bent that, you love to work with your hands, I would really suggest get on YouTube. Look at those car repair videos. They'll walk you through anything. All right, fuel for the car. Okay. So we really don't drive that much. My husband's retired. I work from home. Obviously, this is talking about me retiring too. So we're talking about only needing to really get to the grocery store, to, various other stores, maybe going out to dinner several times, and maybe taking a Sunday drive, $100 for gas. Groceries. This physically pains me. It seems like it was only a few years ago, also known as, prior 2022, that we were able to, both of us, eat for $800 a month. Um, I should explain that we don't really buy any processed food. I don't buy snack food or anything like that. We have pretty much a whole food diet, meat and maybe some rice, and then from there it's fruits and vegetables. So, I cook everything from scratch, always have. So, our grocery bill has always been reasonable, I find, in comparison to what I've seen from others. Um, it's gone up. It's gone up a lot. And by the end of it, by the time that we left our house in Florida prior to selling it, our grocery bill was easily $1,350. And it was just completely out of control. And a little of that was beer, not a lot, for my husband. He likes to have a beer, and I don't have a problem with that. Go from 800, around 800 to 1,000 to 1,350. That's outrageous. It's just outrageous. Okay, so entertainment. So here I have, our primary entertainment is going out to dinner or taking a drive. That's really what we enjoy doing. We love exploring, finding a new, I don't know, finding a new shopping center or mall or something and just walking around, or finding a new downtown area for a smaller city that looks interesting. We'll park the car, walk around, end up eating dinner. So that's kind of what we do for our entertainment, or maybe going out to a movie. Well, here I've got 4 times going out to dinner. And if you look at that, that means $100 each time. That is correct. That is correct. I have been absolutely shocked at how much the cost of going out to dinner has become. If you get, if he gets a beer, I get water. I only ever drink water at my meals. We might get an appetizer. We each get a meal. We hardly ever get dessert. If we do, usually we share one, but we hardly ever do. And then you've got tax and then your tip. I tip 20%. Once you're done with that, your dinner has cost you $100. $100. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I'm not talking about going out for a nice meal where you have to dress up. I'm talking about going out to, I don't know, TGI Fridays or Ruby Tuesdays or Hooligans, for wings or whatever. It's outrageous how much you have to pay. Okay, so looking at these next categories, these really aren't going to apply because they really have to do with slow travel. So flights, travel between locations, that kind of thing. Nope. eSIM, don't need one. Transportation, nope, we have a car. Tours, not taking any. Lastly, clothing, medical, stuff like that. I put aside $400 here because we would want to travel, every year to Australia to be able to see the kids. And that is super expensive. So I've got, some money for clothing or medical, but I've also got our Australia fund in here to, make sure that we can take that trip once a year. Now, for the two of us to travel round trip from Orlando, which was near where we lived, to Sydney, near where she lived, it was easily running us about 2,400 round trip for airline tickets. So, not cheap. So that's 200 of that miscellaneous is going towards the plane tickets. And so enough said about that. Okay, so we figured out that for us to live in Florida, we were going to have a budget of $6,500 a month. For me, retiring early, that is a lot of money considering this doesn't include income tax. It doesn't include, anything, I've got a small amount put aside for medical, but what if one of us got in a car accident, right? So, we looked at that and we realized, these aren't even fixed cost. Um, and the rate that these are rising, it just wasn't feasible for us between the groceries, the insurances, the cost to maintain things, and the vulnerability to the storms. It just was not a good plan for us. So we started looking at our options. So we took a test trip in spring and we found that slow travel was really something that we enjoyed very, very much. So I started putting numbers together between our experiences, between various groups that I'm part of, communities that I'm part of in social media where people actually do this and they share their real cost. It's so helpful. So I started being able to get these figures together. I also used sites such as Numbeo, but this is how I developed our budget for our overseas travel. So the first thing is rent, because we're not going to own anymore. So I have an average rent in our budget of $1,000 a month. For some places, this is extremely low. Okay. If you go to Ireland and you try to get rent for $1,000 through Airbnb, it's going to be really rough to get that. I don't think you're going to find that at all. So what I've done is I've taken the fact that we're staying in Australia, for 3 months with an extremely reduced rent situation. We're a few months in the United States with no rent. And then, we spend part of the time in Southeast Asia. I figure that if we're in Europe, we should be able to spend anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500. And then if we're in Southeast Asia, it would be anywhere from probably $600 a month to about 1,000. So, this is the average that I calculated. I think it's going to be a good average based on what I have had to what I've spent to get Airbnbs for fall of 2025 and spring of 2026 in both Europe and Southeast Asia. Okay, electric is included with your rentals, as is water usually, and internet. So those are all things that when you're shopping for the Airbnb, you're going to go in there and make sure that the utilities are included, or at least if they're not included, you'll know about what you're dealing with for an expected cost. And you can go back and forth with the host and ask them what the average is, what the price is, how it's calculated. Those are all smart things to do, but that's another video. Just know that you can easily get Airbnbs that have everything included in it. Property tax doesn't apply. Insurance for property does not apply. Home maintenance, nope. Cell phone, we're going to keep the same plan, the Essentials 55 plan, and T-Mobile, that will get us texting in free texting in over 215 countries. So we'll be able to get our bank authorization codes and whatnot. Um, we will have calling at a lesser rate, but we can also call over Wi-Fi. I think the calling rate is 25 cents a minute outside of the US, Mexico, and Canada. But if we are on Wi-Fi and we're doing Wi-Fi calling, it's free. So all we have to worry about is cell phone data, which we won't have overseas, or which we're going to make sure we're not going to use through this plan because that would be very expensive. So $70. Okay, so for our medical, dental, and vision, we've got an insurance cost of $282. That is if we go with an ACA plan, which we may or may not be doing. If we don't go with the ACA plan, then this insurance would go from 282 to 482. But for right now, I'm going to count it at 282 per month. And that is for one 58-year-old and one 62-year-old. And like I said, I do a really high deductible. I think this plan is with IHG, and it you have 2000, excuse me, $2 million max with max coverage, and the deductible I think I chose was $5,000. So, you know, it would serve our purpose in each country that we go into. No car insurance, no car maintenance, no fuel for car. We will not have a car. Groceries. Okay, $600. So this is obviously an estimate, an average over time. Australia, the grocery prices, they're not as high as the United States, but they're higher. Southeast Asia, extremely affordable. I don't think I'd spend $600 a month in Southeast Asia from the experience I had for a month there in Thailand. Extraordinarily affordable. Entertainment. So 4 times going out to dinner, I put $200. That is obviously an average. If you're in Europe, you may be in a country where it's hard to do dinner for the two of you for $50. I can tell you that we did it in Germany, outside of Munich. We did it in Spain easily, um, and Italy. So, I don't know what to say for that. Um, and then if you factor in that we are going to be in Southeast Asia, where the two of us regularly ate dinner in Thailand for a total of $5 between the two of us. Fantastic meals. $5, $7. If we splurged and went out and got a burger at a Western restaurant in the Maya Lifestyle Mall, which is extremely upscale, that meal cost us $30. So, saying that you're going to spend $200 for 4 times out to dinner, that's factoring in really what's driving that up really is Australia and the United States. So $200. All right, flights and travel between location. This is the first charge that really we're definitely only going to have slow traveling. So summers in the United States, and then our winter, their summer in Australia over the holidays with the kids. So that leaves us fall and spring. So each of those will find a location, a region of the world that we want to be in, go there, and then from there it's just traveling around that region, which is extremely inexpensive if you're just doing regional flying in most cases. So to give you an example, uh, I did get our flights on points from Boston to Milan. Okay, but ordinarily that would probably be $1,000 for the two of us if I bought carefully. Okay. Now, once you're in Milan, Italy, for me to fly to our first stay in Croatia, that's for the two of us less than $200 for the two of us. So that's $200 in flights for a full month. So for me, saying $600 to either have a flight or travel between location, that's really just paying for those long hauls to get to where you need to go because the United States and Australia are so far away from everything else. You have to, that's where the fee is. That's where the big fee is. Once we're already in Europe, it's very inexpensive to fly between there. And likewise with Southeast Asia. It's not expensive, folks, if you're flying between locations. So by putting aside $600 per month, I've effectively set aside $7,200 a year to get us really basically to and from Australia and the United States. Whether it's a cruise, whether it's flights, that's what that's for. Okay. Now, talked about the uh, cell phone. So you're going to need a SIM card for $5 a month is what we've got. We're doing an eSIM. We're going to do a global plan because we are going to be all over the globe every year. And we're going to do it annually. So that really brings the cost down to only $5 a month. I batted around the idea of increasing our cell phone plan, but it would have brought it up by $100 a month as opposed to $5 a month. It's really hard to argue with that. We'll probably only get one of us get it so that, the other person can always tie into it if we're out and about walking. But, when you're walking around in the world, most locations, there's Wi-Fi everywhere. So if you really are having a hard time getting a connection with your data, you just duck in, buy a cup of coffee somewhere, sit down, they've got wireless. I can just about guarantee you they've got wireless. So you're not going to be stranded, believe me. All right, transportation. So this is I make the distinction between travel and transportation. Transportation for me is the category that shows traveling within the country. So if you're buying bus passes, if you are taking a taxi or a Grab, any of that, that's going to factor here. So I have $60. That's probably super high, but we definitely on travel days, we take taxis or Grabs to and from the airport. That's part of our Be Kind to Lou and Martha mantra that we have on travel days. So we'll take a taxi to and from. The most I ever paid for one of those was in Munich. Oh, okay. We didn't even stay in Munich. We stayed at a hotel near the airport. $15, I think, each way. That was the most I'd ever paid. In Thailand, it was maybe $6 each way with the tip. And then in Spain, I think it was about $10 each way. Tours. I'm not going to pay for tours in Florida, really. It's just not my jam. But if I go overseas, I want someone to take me to some places. I would not have wanted to try to do, for example, the elephant sanctuary tour all by myself. That would have been so difficult to arrange. I don't know who to contact, yada, yada, yada. I don't know the history of some of these places. And so you get a tour, and if you spend your money wisely, you can get a really good deal and you can learn so much on these tours. And I've done several of them now. Not sorry that I did any of them. Okay. I've loved every single one of them and I've learned a lot. So $300 we've got there. And then lastly, we've got $700 for miscellaneous costs that might crop up. This is almost twice as much as the one in the US. You are in a foreign country, okay? You're in a foreign country. You need to understand that you are not going to be able to anticipate everything that could happen in that country. And so you need to have extra money within your budget to be able to account for that, whether it's clothing, medical, a visa. You have to pay for visas in a lot of these countries. Um, there's quite a few that you can enter as a tourist for free, but there are going to be places we're going to want to go where they're going to say, no, you know what, it's going to be $25. Vietnam's a great example. We're going to have to pay for our visas to Vietnam for the spring of 2026. So you just have to have that money in there. You have to be prepared. So $700. So that brought us to a total of $3,817. Now, our budget that we're trying to do is $4,000. Okay. So the miscellaneous is a bit of a cushion. Plus, we've got an average of almost $200 a month for cushion. So this should allow us, between the miscellaneous and the cushion, this should allow us to deal with currency fluctuations, inflation and whatnot, because the budget is not going to stay a static $4,000 a month. And then, 5 years from now, it's going to be $4,000 a month. We're going to index it with inflation. That's all in my plans. So anyway, you can see there's a stark difference. There's a difference of $2,700 between Florida and slow traveling overseas. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So the decision for us was actually pretty easy, to make that we were going to be going overseas. So I hope that this video was helpful to somebody out there who's, looking at their situation. They want to retire early, but they can't quite seem to get there or wrap their head around how they would be able to do it. Here's some information for you. Take my categories, fill them out for your current situation. Do some work on Numbeo. What's a country you want to go visit? Or maybe you want to get in a year-long visa in a country, and then you can get a contract for a rent, spend much less money. You can do this. You can do this. If this added value, please do like and subscribe and share the video so that other people can also learn about how to budget for this. And, thank you so much for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you enough how much this means that I get to share something that I'm so excited about and that's going to help us. So, thank you again for watching my video, and I hope that you have a wonderful week and God bless.